we will never part. O noble Kappa Alpha Psi, from thee will never part.
I went to Indiana State.
Yeah. Alpha Zeta.
Yeah, and they didn't have a chapter.
Really?
Yeah. So in
was y'all commuted or y'all just?
We went there every Sunday morning to Ball State from November up until we went over in March.
Wow. So did y'all do stuff on campus at Indiana State?
A little bit. We studied information.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, we had parties and and dressed alike and so forth. Yeah.
What year was that?
1968. I started pledging in 68.
Right.
And went over in 69.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated in 70.
So can you kind of talk about like what kind of inspired you to become a Kappa? Did you know any Kappas or just?
Well, I back up and say going to Shortridge.
Right.
There were a lot of Kappas who went to Shortridge.
Okay.
And we went to a lot of homecomings.
Okay.
At Ball State, IU, a little bit at Purdue, but basically those three schools.
Okay.
And we fell in love with the stepping.
Right.
And the guys dressing alike and so forth.
Right.
So we pledged through Ball State from first week of November clear up through middle part of February.
Really? Okay. Okay. So I know Ernest Thomas was your line brother. You're saying.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Did you know him prior to be y'all pleasant, or is he from Gary? One.
He's from Gary, but we went down to Indiana State the same year.
Okay.
As freshmen.
Okay.
So I knew him through up until I graduated a year before him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When did he go out to I remember you telling me the story. He actually went back home to Gary.
Worked in a steel mill.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Did he always want to be an actor?
Oh, he wanted to get away from there so quickly. But he was only up there about a year, and then he's, like most movie stars, they found a way to get out of their hometown and head
out
west, where he could see opportunities to act.
Right.
And you probably remember his show.
Yeah, What's Happening?
What's Happening? And they had that about 5-6 years, I believe.
Yeah, and I remember he was on. He was in the Malcolm X movie.
Malcolm X. Mm-hmm.
And Everybody Hates Chris. The Chris Rock show.
Chris Rock. Yeah.
No, he was.
Good guy. We were roommates.
Really? Wow. So for a year?
Well, I was a senior and he was a junior.
Oh, wow.
And we went to summer school together and lived in a house in Terre Haute.
Really?
And we had a similar personality.
Okay.
Edward Irving, Armstrong, Grant, and Alexander.
Right.
Those four were living when I was Polmark.
Oh, wow.
And
were they here in the city?
No, when we had it in Bloomington.
Okay.
And when I went there, we had a guy here in Indianapolis named Bob Williams, and he was Mr. Kappa Alpha Psi. And these guys all knew him.
Okay.
And Bob went to my church. So I was Polmark of Indiana State. And Bob said, Brother Bonds, hey man, come on, sit with me. I said, where you going to sit at, Bob? Well, I'm going to sit down the front. Come on, go with me. I followed him down there, man. And those four founders was at that table that we sat at for the Founders Day banquet. So it was enjoyable listening to those guys talk. Because most of them, but those four guys there, they were educators. And they had good jobs. And they had good occupations. when they got out. Mm-hmm. He was with those guys.
Why wasn't he a founder? That's what I.
Because when the fraternity was founded, well, when they worked to get it activated, it was in 1910, I believe. Mm-hmm. And according to Armstrong, we had a snowstorm.
Oh, okay.
And you didn't have cars back then. Right. You had horse and buggy. Mm. And he couldn't get up here for 6 months.
Application.
Well, no, not application. To be with those guys. He was started off with them. But he was like junior. And back in those days, keep in mind, wasn't no cars. Right. Wasn't no buses. Wasn't no cabs. So those guys had to take horse and buggy to get down to Bloomington from here.
Really?
Or wherever they're from, because some of them are outside Indianapolis.
But that would have took a couple of weeks to travel from Indianapolis to Bloomington on a buggy.
He said a year.
No.
Well, keep in mind now, horse, buggy, 10 inches of snow in January. You're not getting down there in no 15, 20 minutes.
It take about an hour driving. So a horse and buggy, maybe a week.
No, it could be a buggy, just one horse. Yeah. And it's getting him down there in the snow. And keep in mind, they're going through Martinsville.
Oh, damn.
So they can't be on 37 driving down to IU. They were going through alleys, man, and round corners and so forth.
I just can't play. It ain't take no year.
No, a year for them to come back. For him to come back, and join them. Okay. Because they were initiated in January, so he saw in December that the snowstorm came. He couldn't get down there.
All right.
It take 4 or 5.
Wellington Jenkins, Beta Lambda, Wayne College, 1968.
Okay. And then talk about that story that you told me about when you met the founders.
Well, we happened to go with another Lion brother, and we just happened to go over to one of our friends' house, and his dad was, at the time, pole mark of Gary Alumni. And this had to be like 68, because I was a neophyte. And two of the founder fathers were over there. I didn't think it was a big deal at the time until I talked to some other brothers. You met two founder fathers? I said, yes, man, I would love to meet them. And that's why I realized, hey, it was a big deal.
What did that mean for you as a new initiate, just to meet the founder so early?
It blew my mind, though, Brandon. I was just blown away. I just couldn't believe it. That I was meeting two of the founders. But like I said, at the time, I didn't think it was that big a deal, but I was young. And when I met them, I talked to a few other brothers, and they said they would love to meet some of the founders. And I had an opportunity to do it, and I hadn't been in the fraternity about a month. Yeah, I was young.
Kind of talk about what was it like, seeing your uncle, your godly grand. What was that like growing up?
It was great. He was a great guy. I think I might have told you that he had picnic every year for the family. He lived on 44th Street between Cold Spring Road and Kessler. And he had acreage where he grew crops and whatnot. And he had a tractor where all the children could ride in a wagon that he would pull with the tractor. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the highlights.
Did he ever talk about like the founders and the fraternity?
I mean, that he basically did. In fact, he actually spoke at one of the Founders Days banquets.
What year was that?
hard to remember what year that was, but it was Tony Green in the fraternity might know that info because he was there, and he might have recorded it. It was held at Pearl's Lounge on McLean Place back in the day. So it would have been probably around in the 70s, late 70s, I would imagine.
Yeah. So you said your uncle found the grant. He was a dentist for a lot of people.
He was a dentist, yes.
What was that like? Going to see him?
What was what?
He was your dentist. What was that like?
It made me want to stop eating candy because he went ahead one of those old-fashioned drills, you know. So that wasn't too much fun, but it was very economical because he didn't charge the family members for dental service. And his office in later life was at the corner of 30th Street and Capitol Avenue. But he also had an office prior to that on Senate Avenue, around the corner from here.
Here in Indianapolis?
Yeah, it was like around North Street and Senate Avenue, that area, which was the area of the YMCA at the time also.
So your uncle Godlevis Grant, well, he was one of the last living founders.
He was one of the last living founders, yes.
Okay. What did he ever talk about what it was like at IU with the other founders?
Well, not specifically, but he was one of the main people in the fraternity that was for a Kappa house on the IU campus. He was one of the main movers to try to get that done. And so at the 50th anniversary, that was one of the conclaves where held in Bloomington, of course. And that was one of the conclaves where that was a big deal in terms of getting a Kappa house on the IU's campus.
Did you see your uncle a lot growing up? And did he give you a letter of recommendation?
Did he give me a what?
A letter of recommendation?
I'm sure he did. I can't remember.
That'd be worth some money if you found it.
Well, I wouldn't have it, you know, because it would have been sent.
Oh yeah, man, that's wow. And you said your dad was pole market Alpha chapter.
He was at one time, yes, in the 30s.
Okay, and so you said your grandmother
Carrie Parker
and founded Godlevis Grant were brother and sister.
Correct.
Okay, so that's what makes it. Can you, and lastly, brother Russell, can you talk about what did it mean for you being in a bond, knowing that your great uncle was a founder?
Well, number one, of course, as I told you, I attended Purdue University. There were no Kappas on the campus. As a matter of fact, there were really not many Greek members on the campus at all in terms of the black community. But as a matter of fact, when I was a freshman, we had an organization called the IOKA, IOKA, which stood for Independence, Omegas, Kappas, and Alphas.
Oh, wow.
When, in other words, when we gave dances and so forth, we did it under that name, IOKAs.
So you guys were pretty united back then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
But as far as your original question, the Omegas were the dominant black fraternity at Purdue at the time. And of course, there was not much question about me pledging Omega instead of Kappa. So then I had to determine it. We had to get a way to get the Kappas at Purdue's campus. So we went about trying to do that. And as I told you, when I talked to the dean of students about such an idea, he told me that there was already one black fraternity on campus, the Omegas, as if to say that was all we needed. Because as you know, the black community is, as well as any community, is very diverse. That you can't really go by one point of view. Everybody has a point of view, and so at that time, I elected to contact the national headquarters, and H.H. Holloway was the executive secretary at the time, and we had lots of literature that was sent to the dean of students about Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity from the national headquarters, which also included some of the more famous celebrities in the fraternity, such as Oscar Robertson, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell. And so eventually that kind of set the stage for getting another black fraternity, at least one more black fraternity, the Kappas on campus. But we had to pledge, as I mentioned to you earlier, we had to come down on the weekends to pledge at the Indianapolis Alumni chapter.
Right. I guess my last question. Did you ever have any interaction with Urban Armstrong?
Yes. He lived right around the corner from my grandmother and our family on 40th Street.
Mm-hmm. Well,
he lived on Bernard Avenue, and he was very, even though he was older, he still had a lot of energy, and his wife particularly was a great cook. So, we always wanted an excuse to visit Brother Armstrong, and that was one good excuse other than being active in fraternity. But he was very interested in the fraternity, as you know, even though he wasn't a founder because he had to leave campus to help his family out economically before the chapter was founded. He still was very active and interested in the fraternity.
My name's Eric Cheatham. I was made at Gamma Upsilon chapter, Southern Illinois University, March of 1971. And one of the things that I always remember and cherish, we had an event called Kappa Carnival, which at the time was the largest undergraduate sponsored college social event in the country. That was a big event, probably the Kappa's biggest event on the level of a conclave. Founder Edward G. Irvin was a regular attendee at that event and would come and spend most of the weekend at the carnival and interact with, first of all, the brothers and officers from our chapter, and then would be able to circulate with all the thousands of brothers that would come into the event. And it was kind of interesting because every year, I still remember Brother Irvin said, the women, they're just so beautiful, so beautiful. And then he also was very complimentary of we as undergrads of being able to organize and sponsor such a momentous event. So we look forward to that. And of course, in that environment, he was treated like the celebrity that he should have been as one of the founders, and we were doing everything to accommodate and help him and his entourage of, I call them caretakers, but even at that point in his life, I guess this would have been when he was in his 70s, and he still was interacting and connecting well with young men such as ourselves who were between the ages of 18 and 22. And it was just something that I'll always cherish, and those of us who were there look forward to and had many memories of it.
What did that mean for you as a young brother in the bond to meet one of the founders?
Oh, it meant a lot. Now, in my case, I met other founders, and like some other things that you know, I remember still growing up in Indianapolis, and even though I didn't know it at the time, but brother Grant, who's a dentist, his office was down the street from my father's barber shop. And then also, part of his family lived right across the street from us on Eugene Street. So it wasn't until after I had gone over and years later that I made those connections, and somebody that you would also grew up and see in everyday life. And what I can still remember, just because of his station in life, he was considered prominent, being in the medical profession and things of that nature. Brother Diggs, that would be in a School 42, which was right down the street from the church where I grew up, and was still in the same basic community. I didn't meet him, but it was amazing that there was a school that was named after him. That was a prominent part of the community where I grew up going to school and church myself.
Did you ever meet Brother Alexander, Founder Alexander?
Yes, I met him, through events that, or things like that in Indianapolis, through the Alumni chapter. I didn't have as much personal interaction with him during those undergrad years as I did with brother Irvin. But of course, he would always be, and then to attend, to be able to attend their homegoing celebrations, that was also memorable.
Good morning, I'm Myron Hardiman. I was initiated at New Chapter, Purdue University, October 25th, 1966. I am a current member of Indianapolis Alumni Chapter. I had the pleasure of actually meeting 4 of the founders. The first one I met was Byron K. Armstrong. I met him at the conclave in St. Louis in 1967. I'd just been initiated in October of '66, so I was a young neophyte. I also, when I came to Indianapolis, I joined the Indianapolis Alumni Chapter and had the pleasure to meet founder Ezra D. Alexander and Guy L. Grant, who were members of Indianapolis Alumni Chapter at the time. Unfortunately, they both passed in 71, 72 time frame. So I didn't get a chance to get to know them well, but I did get an opportunity to meet them. And then the other founder that I had an opportunity to meet and got to know fairly well was founder Edward G. Irving, who was living in Chicago. But he would be at province councils and conclaves, and so I had the opportunity to associate with Founder Irving several times, and he was a joy to get to know and to understand. Let me also add, although he wasn't a founder, I had the opportunity to get to know and talk with Irvin Armstrong, who was the second Grand Pole mark after Elder Watson Diggs. But Brother Armstrong actually would have been a founder because he was in school at the time that they were formulating and putting together the basics for Kappa Alpha Psi. But Brother Armstrong had to drop out of school the semester that the charter was incorporated due to financial issues, and he was not in school when the charter was actually chartered, but he was one of the first initiates, and as I said, he became the second Grand Pole mark, which was always a bit it was a bit curious for me because when Diggs was Grand Pole mark for about 6 years, and many of the founders were still around and available, but he chose, or the fraternity chose, Irvin Armstrong to become the second Grand Pole mark. I won't say bypassing, but at least not choosing any of the other founders to become the second Grand Pole mark. So to me, that also said that They held him in high regard and esteem to name him the second Grand Pole Mark after Elder Watson Gates.